what is the needed necessary licenses that you have to get when you start a bar and a kitchen?
One is your food license, FSSAI. There's a trade license that you need to get for that space. Then a liquor license, which is very important for you to be able to purchase and sell liquor.
So have you tried any weirdest food combination and but you think it works out?
In terms of combination, I've also had something very, very weird, which was like there are these particular kind of ants and they sprinkle it all over your dish and give it to you. And you're supposed to like just pop it in your mouth. Yeah, and I've had that. I did a lot of experimentation. I did everything like newspaper ads, pamphlets, some marketing agency which did like a offline event and this and that. And I just went crazy and I did everything and nothing worked. There's only one thing that works for a restaurant, which nobody will tell you. All these things that I'm telling you, let me say, nobody will talk about it.
Rachna, welcome to Wisdom, Bites of Wisdom. That's our podcast name, and here we're going to talk about a lot about you, your restaurant, and your strategies. Okay, so let's start off with a brief introduction about you.
Sure. So first of all, I just want to thank you, Archana. Thank you for calling me over, and very happy to. So very excited to be here because I think also like why I immediately said yes was because this is something that I have been wanting to do for a very long time. I mean, I didn't know that whether I want to do like a podcast or what, but just share my insights and also I faced similar challenges in the beginning when I was starting out. Like you said, I resonate with all of that completely. That there's absolutely no place where you can go and like really Google or find out or reach out even to a consultant and ask how to start a restaurant. Even consultants don't give the correct information because or complete information, I would like to say, because I don't know, maybe because there's just so much information asymmetry and maybe a lot of people want to take advantage of that. It's very, you have to be very wary of finding the right person and that nobody's taking advantage of you, because obviously if I don't know how many licenses are required to open a restaurant, or even more so relevant for a bar, which I have, then how do I like vet the information given to me? Yeah. So anyway, so just quickly to give you a little bit introduction about myself. I moved to Bangalore in 2018, and 2019 is when I started my restaurant. So I run a company by the name of Tripco Hospitality. And there is a restaurant and bar under the company by the name of Oyster Bar and Kitchen, which was my first venture, which I started in 2019 in HSR Layout, Bangalore. And I have recently, like I would say it's been a year, I've also opened a cafe by the name of North Star Cafe under the same company. And I also run a service apartment in Gurgaon by the name of Oyster Service Apartments. So these are the three main businesses that I manage under the company. And of course, there are multiple cloud kitchen brands also that we run from the same, kitchens. Yeah. So we have two kitchens, right, out of North Star and Oyster. So we run some cloud kitchen brands. So that's more of a passion project, like some cuisine that I'm interested in. So I launched like a small cloud kitchen in that, and then just see, how people respond to that. So I'm not really from the hospitality background. In fact, none of my family members or anyone in my family also did not really have like a forget about hospitality, not even like a business background. It was all like service and jobs, and I also started my career like that, where I started working on a government project, and then I was into skill development. I was in the edtech industries. In fact, I moved to Bangalore to because I got a job over here. I was working with an academy at that time, and then I don't know, like somehow I got really inspired by the Bangalore brewery culture, and I saw that people are just like, they love going out over here, and the way they socialize, it was something different that I'd not seen in any other city, even big cities like Bombay and Delhi. So that got me really thinking that there, it seemed like there's a gap, or I would say that there is a big demand in the market, and that's how I started exploring and started meeting restaurant owners, and then one thing led to another, and finally in 2019 is when I launched Oyster.
Okay, so why take that big risk at this first initial step only? Like people start off with their homely kitchen or a cloud kitchen,
Hmm.
or for that matter, small cafe or tea shop. For you, it was a huge leap, right?
Yes.
Why did you want to take that risk in the first go?
I mean, of course, there was a risk involved, and I mean, I was very well aware of it. But I was leaving like I said, that I started my career in 2014, and this is in 2019. So I was already like working for the last 5-6 years in different jobs, and I was doing really well in my career. Like I had worked with the central government of India. I had worked with a startup in Bombay. I'd worked with Unacademy, which is like one of the leading edtech companies. So I was doing personally really well in my career. So to leave all of that, I mean, I did not want to do like a small business or anything like that. I always had like a big dream, and I wanted to do something big. It had to be that attractive for me.
So it was go big or
Yeah, so I mean, I was very sure that it has to be that attractive and that big that I do it with wholeheartedly, because otherwise I had like a great career going on, and I could see like that I would grow in that career. And I was very like I was in like a very stressful full time kind of a job where like big projects, big teams, all of that. So to leave all of that and then just to run like a small cloud kitchen, I don't think it wouldn't really like be that exciting for me. So while I was aware of the risks, I also saw a big potential, right? And that's what kept me excited and kept me going. And I thought that if I have to leave this and then go for like a full-time business, it has to be something big and exciting, so that then eventually it'll keep me motivated every day. Yeah.
Got it. So why Oyster Bar and Kitchen? What's the story behind the name? Or why not Star Cafe?
Yeah, so Oyster Bar and Kitchen was, I was very sure of the format when I was starting out. I knew that I wanted to do a rooftop bar, because coming to Bangalore from Bombay, I loved the weather over here, and, just that, initial thing of like, that you go, and there were so many other rooftops that I used to enjoy going to. Even when you go to any restaurant, you want to sit like in the outdoor space, because Bangalore has like really great weather. So I knew I wanted to do a rooftop bar. I knew that I wanted to do a bar because I myself would like to go to such places in the evening where I want to meet friends, and mostly it would be in like places that have like a wide variety of food and drinks, and everyone in my circle would want to meet over a drink. So that's something that I personally like to do. And of course now there's like so much work and life is different now, but like back in the day, like 5-6 years back, we would like hang out so many times, like 3 times 4 times a week. All the friends would want to meet up, and we would go and try out different bars. So that's something that I personally like doing. Like if you would ask me what do you want to do after work in the evening, I would like to go and maybe like explore a new bar in Indranagar or MG Road or whatever. So I was very sure about the format that I want to do. Because of Bangalore, I wanted to do a rooftop bar. The name happened. I mean, there's not really a very interesting story behind the name. It was just, I was struggling with so many things. And like you pointed out earlier that, there's so many legal aspects and this and that and, licenses, that name was not something that I was too bothered about. I thought of a few names in the beginning, but something or the other did not work out. It was always that, there's already a place by that name. So I just wanted to keep a neutral name, which I could also turn into, like, for example, Oyster is a bar and kitchen, which was my first venture. Then I started Oyster Service Apartments in Gurgaon. I also wanted to start Oyster Cafe, but then I decided to not keep the same name and I changed it to North Star Cafe. But basically the idea was to have like a neutral name, which can then become differently. I can attach cafe and restaurant and whatever, like a hotel and all of that to it. So that was the idea.
Like you told me that you just started without the background, so you must definitely would have changed, have faced a lot of challenges on the way. And I also wanted to ask, like, are you doing this alone or do you have any partners along with you?
No, I'm doing it by myself.
So definitely I want to hear your story. As a woman, what are the challenges that you faced in 2019 when you opened?
I think I can just go on talking about it, because like even when I think about that time, now I feel, oh my God, how did I do it? At that time, I don't know, there was some energy in me, something, I don't know, because probably at that time I didn't know the challenges. So I thought, okay, I have to start a business, I'll figure it out, whatever, I'll do it. How difficult can it be? But I had no idea, and that's why I think I was able to do it. because it was very, very difficult, like right from looking for a location. Even I remember at that time when I reached out to some brokers, because nobody would take me seriously.
Yes. Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Because also, like, you can imagine, this was 6 years back, so I was much younger also, right? At that time, I think hardly like 28, 29 at that time. So people would not take me seriously, single,
Women,
young
yeah.
female. It was very difficult to convince people that this is something that I want to do. And they would some broker, like, I had to follow up so much with the brokers also, just to show me the right places, because they would not take me seriously. Then finally, when I reached that next stage where I started seeing some properties, I still remember there was a property owner who was very apprehensive in even showing me their property, because they were constantly asking me questions like, what will you do if the cops come over? How will you manage the cops? How will you manage the authorities? Do you have anyone else with you? And at some point, I just didn't know what else to tell him, because I kept saying that, no, it's my business, it's my idea, I'm going to do it. So at some point, I had to tell him that, like, do you mean if I have a man with me or not? Like, what are you asking? And so, those kind of challenges and then ultimately he did not show me the property. He didn't even show it to me, forget about, like, giving it to me. And I get it, maybe, like, from his perspective, it would be that he wanted to give it out to someone who would obviously run it for the long run, and he didn't want to keep worrying about new tenants, which I can understand. But that's the kind of mindset people have, that's the kind of discrimination you have to go through. And imagine, all of this is much before I had even started. So I got a flavor of it, like, right in the beginning. And then there were so many challenges where I reached out to a consultant, because I said that I don't have too much idea about the business, I should have a professional to help me. I reached out to multiple consultants, I interviewed them, I spoke to them, I tried to get references from about them. And finally, I selected a consultant, but even the consultant was just trying to make his money. I mean, sorry to say, but after some time, I understood that that consultant is just absolutely not interested in whether I'm able to launch my restaurant, whether my restaurant lunch, it works successfully or not. Nothing. He just wanted to get his money, and he was least bothered about anything. And why I can say that with so much confidence is because he also misguided me in certain things. Like, like, there was a particular location which happens to be now that's where Oyster is at. Okay. But before finalizing the location, I checked, because there are all these rules that in this kind of location you can't open a bar, or there are like multiple rules, like there should not be a school within 100 meters, there should not be a hospital, there are certain certifications required, all of that. So because he was my consultant, he was supposed to tell me all that. And now I know these things. At that time, I didn't even know what BBMP certificates, what khata, what this, what that. I didn't know anything. And he just told me that, he said that, yeah, I've gone and done my research and I've asked people, and they've said that they'll be able to give you a license for that space.
Oh, okay.
Which is just, rubbish, because he did not do any of that. And later on, when I invested in that property, when I gave my security deposit, my rent started, my construction started, because it was a rooftop. So it was a barren rooftop, which I then did some kind of interiors and construction. Then I get to know that, there are so many problems with it. There are so many reasons why the authorities don't want to give licenses for that space. And that's when I realized that, oh my God, he just wanted, because, as soon as I finalize my space, he will get his installment and, so on and so forth. So that's how I got conned in the beginning only. So so many challenges at every stage. Then, of course, dealing with the authorities, getting the licenses. So just to give you perspective, Oyster Bar and Kitchen is in HSR layout, right at the signal. Mm-hmm. And there was when I was opening up, there was a space that was opening up right next to me. Okay. So Oyster is in the center, and on the right side and on the left side, there were two more restaurants coming up. So just to give you perspective, both those shut down.
Oh my God.
Yeah, okay. They could not open. So one place completely shut down, they wrapped up, and this is just 1 month into opening, they wrapped up, and they have they left because they could not get the licenses. And the other place on the left side, they are still running, but they are running as a restaurant, not as a bar, because they were not again able to get their licenses. So that's how difficult and uncertain it is, because obviously even those people, they would have done their research, they would have figured things out before investing, but even then they were not able to get all the licenses. And
Finally, when did you get your license after all these struggles? What were the challenges again faced by when you were getting the license?
yeah, so then I think I got like most of my licenses, like the food license and the liquor license and all of that in the first 3-4 months. So I started like from July 2019 is when the interiors started, and by October 2019, all the interior work and everything was settled. And I was hoping that I get everything, like all my paperwork done by then, because the rent also started. But then like I think it took like some of the licenses I got in the first 3-4 months. Some licenses were still pending, but by talking to some of the authorities, by making some arrangements, etc., there are ways to sort of get things done. So I was very persistent, and I was very lucky also to find the right people. While I'm talking about all these challenges, I think I was also very fortunate to have found the right connects, and some of the people really helped me out very, very well, because of which I was able to sort of like start the operations. And then eventually, even like post starting the operations, I think still didn't have like all my paperwork in place, but it was all like underway or something. Then within 6 months or something like that, then finally I was able to get it. But like right now it sounds easy when I say that 3 months and 6 months. It doesn't sound that bad.
Yeah.
But at that time, you don't know. You don't know whether it's going to be 1 month or 4 months or 6 months, or whether you will get it also at all or not, and which day you will have to shut down. So, it's that kind of uncertainty, and with that kind of investment, it is very, very difficult. And so that's the problem. And all these licenses, ideally, you should be able to get everything within a month. And but whereas I'm saying 6 months, 8 months, that kind of a time.
What is the needed necessary licenses that you have to get when you start a bar and a kitchen?
So I think one is your food license, FSSAI. There's a trade license that you need to get for that space. Then a liquor license, which is very important for you to be able to purchase and sell liquor. So those are the 3 main licenses that you need to get. And then of course there are all these smaller licenses which all restaurant formats need to get, like depending on what kind of floor or place you were in, fire license, shops and establishment, and like there are a couple of like fire NOC actually. And so those kind of which is common across all restaurant formats, but there are like multiple of these small licenses. So in total there are at least like 12-13 licenses that you need to figure out and get. And
so did you do this all by yourself, or did you again take a consultant's help?
Not really a consultant, because by then I understood the consultants are like but I found, so I somewhere you can say I did some work myself, somewhere I found some good connects in the industry. Some people from within the industry helped me out to sort of get these things done. But yeah, like majorly I did it by myself. I just found some local help to sort of like just help me out in like reaching out to these officials and getting things done.
Okay. When you said you started off with all of this, like in the initial stages, did it take a lot of time for you to hire staff? And how did you do that? And what did you look into when you were talking for, or hiring for staff?
So I think hiring staff was not that difficult, to be honest. That now the thing is that the licenses and the legality and all of that is such a challenging part, that all these other things which as an outsider you might feel that those things are important and difficult, those things don't seem that difficult. By then I have spoken to multiple people across the industry, from Bangalore and places outside Bangalore as well. So I had made my connects. I reached out to a few people. I interviewed a few chefs, and I did a few trials basis that I hired. So that was actually, the easy part. That was not that difficult. And once you get your a couple of senior people like a manager and a chef, then they do the remaining hiring. Then you don't really have to worry about the hiring so much, because they have their own teams and they will also have a lot of connects in the industry. So then they will hire people under them.
Got it. So coming to the next question, how do you make them stay?
That is very difficult. That is something that I'm still struggling with. I don't
Okay.
have an answer to that because even till now, which is true for I think the entire hospitality industry, the attrition is very, very high.
Mm.
And while I've managed to, thankfully, and I'm very fortunate that some of my key people have sort of stuck around with me. But other than that, I think there's always people running up here and there, and so I don't really have an answer for that. I'm looking for that answer, but I have tried out my own things, but I figured out that even those things don't work. So to give you an example, we did something which I don't think any other bar is doing probably in the country. I feel like, generally in this industry, you give out salaries to your staff by 10th of the month, 12th of the month. Sometimes, like, especially for bars, I can say it gets even more delayed. So they will say that they'll give it by 10th, but then generally the payout will come by 11th, 12th, 13th, sometimes even 15th. We started this practice where we started giving it out to them on the first of the month. So we
Okay.
give it out to them on the first of the month. We give them good food. Other than the salary, we give service charge, we give bonus, incentives, all of that. So yeah, like for good performance, we have weekly bonuses, we have monthly prizes. So like we'll purchase tablets and give it to them, or we'll earphones, these small things which are like,
Wow.
interesting for them. But even after doing all of that, I've realized that because it's a big incentive for them, right? Like, because in the other place, you see that, you're getting a salary only by 10th, 11th, 12th. And what happens is if they want to leave that job and go, then that remaining, that 10, 12 days ka salary, they will not get.
Not yet. Yeah.
Right? So they have to
Right.
lose out on that. Over here, you're getting it on the first every month, which is great for them because these are people obviously who are not that financially well off. So
Mhm.
it really matters to them whether they are getting that 20,000, 25,000 on the first of the month or the 10th of the month. So because on those 10 days, what will they do? But those things have also not really
Doesn't
worked out. People
matter.
have still run away. So, I don't have an answer to that till now. I am also figuring out.
So, as a woman leader, how do you create this positive environment for your customer or for your staff?
So I think I didn't really look at it, from that lens too much. I didn't think that, okay, so I'm a woman, what should I do differently, like that. It was just about creating a team, creating some kind of decorum, discipline in the team, some kind of positive culture, incentivizing people. So just regularly, like how any leader would sort of build their team. I had, like I said, that I'd worked in corporates before that. So I had teams under me. And
Okay.
so just, I don't really think I did anything differently thinking that, okay, so I'm a woman, so I should do these
Did they
things.
accept you as a woman leader?
Personally, I feel that if till the time you are not thinking these things and you don't have these issues in your own head, like, you're not sort of like constantly
Not taking you for granted.
thinking that oh, I'm a woman leader, so will they accept me? Then I think till then it's fine. Like, if you don't have those apprehensions, then the other people mostly that's what I've seen in my experience. While I know that yes, there is that world out there, there is that section of people that who will have a problem with women giving them orders or whatever. They will not take a woman seriously. But because I never thought of it like that, I would never keep that barrier. So I didn't really have that issue, I would say, ever, where I thought that, oh, he's not or she's not taking me seriously because I'm a woman or whatever. Having said that, I mean, of course, I have also faced certain gender discrimination at different points in my life and while running a business and all of that. But more often than not, I have sort of tried, it does not reach me, because if it starts impacting me, if I only start feeling, oh, I'm a woman and they'll not do this and they'll not do that, it'll become very difficult for me to run my business. So,
where all did you face this women discrimination or gender discrimination, and how did you overcome that?
So like I said, like in the beginning only, like some people
Yeah,
questioned that whether I'll be able to do it also or not. So that, then I think more than the staff, it happens a lot with the government authorities. So the excise department, the BBMP, the police, so they would not want to talk to me directly. They would find it weird or whatever. They would constantly, like sometimes I would go to these offices also with like a couple of these local connects that I had made. So they would only talk to them, knowing very well that they are not the owners, I am the owner, but they would not even talk to me, they would not address me. But at that time, I was just focused on getting my work done. So, I was not bothered about, I was just like, okay, you talk to whoever you want, just do my work. So yeah, those kind of, I think, differences. And I think one more thing which I started feeling lately is sometimes there's a lot of issues within the staff, and most of my staff is men.
Okay.
right? So
Okay.
they will get into some physical fights,
Oh.
or they will have some major issues back in the staff room, or like if there are like a group of 10 men bashing each other up in the restaurant. That is sometimes when I feel that like slightly helpless,
Maybe,
like I
yeah.
feel that, oh my god, like what should I do now, because I can't go into that fight and stop it,
Exactly.
right?
I have faced the same situation here. My chef was a drunkard.
Oh my god.
There was this one chef who was really good with his cook, but he used to come drunk.
Oh.
And there was some kind of a controversy. We were just talking randomly. We had a general meeting, and this guy got so aggressive because he was drunk, and then he just walked off.
Yeah.
And then after some time, he came back and he was like, "Ma'am, I'm really sorry." He started falling on my feet. He
Oh
started
my
holding my
God.
hands. He was like, he was just too close to my personal circle,
Yeah,
and I don't
which
like
you did not
that.
like.
And I know that he's drunk and he's just overly too close to you. And maybe at that point I was like, I wish there was somebody here to take care
Yeah.
of this. And then I called my friend. He came to help me. He was in such a chaotic environment that time. He went inside the kitchen. There's these shelves, right? So he removed everything from the shelf.
Oh my
and then
God.
he slept there.
Oh my god.
It was that level.
Oh my god.
Thank God my friends were here. Two
Yeah.
of them came. They bashed him left and right and said, if you come once again drunk, get out. I had service staff. I had two women.
Yeah.
One was here, one was in the room because it was her off. And this guy also had off, one of the other
Yeah.
person. He told, no, I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't have any bad habits.
Yeah.
And I was like, I was just very bad at cooking. I got to know after I hired him. And then I was like, okay, from tomorrow you don't come because it's not working
Yeah.
for us. He got so pissed off, he ran, he went and knocked at the door, at
Oh
the
my
woman's
God.
door.
Yeah.
And that girl got so scared.
Of course,
He's,
yeah.
he's
that's-
sending messages to her saying, if you don't come out, you know what I'll do. I'll send you pictures.
What?
Yeah, and then at that second, it was my birthday that day.
Oh
and
my
I was out with
God.
my friends.
Yeah.
I got to know all of this. I came back in a hurry.
So
and
sad.
I couldn't get into the room because even I was scared. Because
Of
he was
course. Yeah,
drunk.
yeah.
And then that moment, I sent my friend, please go take care of this. I can't get into the staff room.
Yeah.
And then he went, he bashed him out, kicked him out that
Yeah.
second itself.
Yeah, same. So I think these are certain things where I feel like a very similar incident happened with me also, where the staff was doing some kind of I think they took away some money or something like that. But I also did this exact same thing where I called one of my friends, like a male friend, and then he came and he bashed up those guys. That's where I feel that, those are things, because obviously I can't bash up
Yeah.
these men, right? Like I can't hit them. And the problem is that it's not like I want to do that or I feel that that's the right thing to do. But you know what? Till the time I also spoke to these guys and I
Yeah.
took it up with them. I was like, how I confronted them that how can you do this? But till that time, I could just see the difference in their body language and their attitude. Till that time, nothing was really coming out of it, and that is the reason why I called my friend. And then when he came and he just sort of scolded them so badly, and I think hit them or whatever, their attitude just changed. And they accepted everything. And so, sadly enough, but I had that realization that, okay, this is the only thing that works. So that's only in some situations, these kind of situations, sometimes I feel that, oh my God, this is one thing I can't do because I'm a woman.
I wish I had a partner.
Yeah. No, I don't think that I have a partner very happy running it by myself. I don't want to have a partner at all because I have seen so many restaurants
that was like one of the questions.
Yeah.
Do you think you need a partner?
Not at all. Not at all. I'm very happy running it by myself because I can take all the decisions by myself. I don't have to wait or check with someone, and decision making is much faster. I think I work very well also as an individual contributor running things on my own. So I don't think at any point I've ever felt that I needed a partner. This was more specific about just very situational and more specific to the whole gender discrimination situation that you were asking about. But yeah, I think I'm very happy running it by myself. Yeah.
Got it. So coming to your diverse menu, okay, and how do you obviously know that there should be an innovation in the kitchen,
Yeah.
each and every time. So how do you go about that?
I think, it's also a little linked to the question you asked me just before this. So because I'm doing everything on my own and I'm a single founder, so I think from day one, I knew very well that I need to hire experts and let them do their job well, because I can't do everything by myself, right?
Yeah.
And I'm also not from like, I know how to run the business, but I'm not from a very, like, it's not like I went to culinary school, or, I'm personally very passionate about cooking or anything like that. So I always hire professionals to sort of, like, make sure that those kind. Then I will share my vision with them, and then they will do the execution. So I'll hire like a professional chef. I'll hire I have then hired also a couple of consultants after more research and making sure that I'm hiring the right people to sort of, like, set things right, set the processes right in the kitchen, make sure that they can translate my vision, and so, yeah, so I mean, basically just get experts, get a good team, and get them to do the work. That's the mantra that I follow.
And what about your pricing? Like, of course, there's a lot of inflation right now,
Yeah.
and there's sudden up and down. Like, how do you go about your pricing in changes in the menu according to that? And will people accept it if it is too off?
So in general, I have tried to keep it like a pocket friendly restaurant, and we don't do heavy discounting because I don't believe in that, but we run some offers here and there, because I think that's important. People like that in India.
at the offers, yeah.
Consumers want to come and get, like, everyone wants to get like a 10% discount, 15% discount. Everyone's looking for discounts. I think it's big in the Indian market, and everyone's looking at Zomato for discounts, so it gets you good crowd. So I do keep running offers. I keep the prices not very high. Of course, you have to make sure that all your margins and everything is covering up for your costs. But I've tried to keep it very, very pocket friendly. We are not very quick to change our prices. If there is, of course, like you said, there's inflation. The vegetable prices keep going up and down, and raw material prices keep changing. Sometimes, like, we absorb that cost, like we take a hit on our margins. We don't very quickly and very often change the pricing, but of course, when we know that, okay, this price increases, cost increases here to stay, then we will increase the price obviously accordingly, like that. We'll increase it once in a year or once in 6 months, like that. We also increase gradually. So it's never going to be like, a dish is costing you today $400 and then you come next week and it's suddenly $650. So it will not happen like that. So if it's 400 today, it will be only 420, 430 tomorrow. So we keep it, like, very gradual, because we also have a lot of loyal customers coming to us regularly. So we don't want them to feel suddenly what has happened. So yeah, so generally, like, only if I feel that this is like a cost that is going to impact my margins and it's going to stay in the long run, only then I touch my pricing. Otherwise, if it's just like a very short term effect, I don't touch my pricing. I take a slight hit on my margin, because I think for the long term, it is more important.
Got it. So the next question would be, how do you maintain consistency in your food and the quality of your food?
I think that is just, again, like setting more and more number of processes in the kitchen. Measurement is the key. So we have a very large menu at Oyster, a much smaller menu at North Star. But measurement is what cooking is all about. So anyone can come and cook, I feel, if you give them the right measurement and, just a stepwise recipe. So we've also done that experiment where we've hired like fresher cooks, absolutely fresher chefs who have like no experience, but we give them the right recipe and we make sure that it is followed to the T, and it comes out really well. So I think just ensuring that there are more and more processes in the kitchen, and there is someone to ensure that the processes are being followed, because otherwise with such massive operations, it just goes all haywire. Yeah. So ensure, like, revisiting the recipe book again and again, ensuring that the processes are being followed, ensuring that the measurement is being done. Because if I'm cooking, even let's say, even if we take an example of Maggi, if I'm cooking it and you're cooking it, it's going to be different, right? So it's very, but then if I tell you, okay, you have to put 2 cups of water, and like after the water is at whatever XX degrees, you put the Maggi in, and then you put the entire Maggi masala sachet, then maybe, it'll be quite similar. So I think just defining those steps is as simple and easy as it sounds. That is the secret, I think.
So what do you think a beginner would need for investing in a restaurant and a bar and kitchen?
So I think that, Archana, it's very state specific. So from where, like one state to another, it really varies because the license cost and all of that really
Let's take
varies.
Bangalore as an
So we take
example.
Bangalore as an example. So there are certain things, right? Like what kind of air, like how big the space
The
is and all
space
that.
is,
So all
okay.
of that will really change the kind of interior costs and lots of other things. But even just to give you some idea, so the liquor license over here is the main investment, which works very much like real estate in Karnataka. So you give a security deposit, which is anywhere between 50 to 80 lakhs, which is a refundable security deposit, but you have to block that kind of money. And then you give a monthly rental because licenses work on rentals. To purchase a license, it's extremely expensive. It'll be anywhere around 2 to 3 CR, which becomes a huge cost.
Yeah.
So most people rent out their liquor licenses. So again, the rentals would be anywhere between 2.5 to 3.5 lakhs, depending on the kind of negotiations you do with your, license holder or whatever. Like, there are certain variables over there, but that's like a monthly cost along with a refundable security deposit that you have to do. Then, so that's the liquor license. Then there is a property security deposit, again refundable, but then you have to block that money. So that will depend on which area to area, right? Like if you're doing it in MG Road in Indranagar, it will be very, very high. Whereas if you're doing it, let's say in Bannerghatta or BTM layout, it will be slightly lesser depending on the per square feet area over there. And then the rentals, of course. But I think overall, if I were to give you a ballpark figure, I think for like a 4,000 square feet space with a liquor license and all the interiors and again, what kind of interiors you want, right? Like it can be very basic to very fancy. So many variables over there. But I think nothing less than 3 CR, I would say. Also, and a little buffer also, maybe like I would say 2.5 to 3.5 CR, because also it's important to keep some money aside for your initial first few months of operations, because you can't expect to make profit from the first month, right?
That's true.
Yeah.
So, how did you go about marketing from the initial stage till now?
So I did a lot of things because, like I said, I was not from the industry. I didn't have the experience. I didn't know what works, what doesn't work. So I did a lot of experimentation. I did everything, like newspaper ads, pamphlets, some marketing agency which did like a offline event and this and that. And I just went crazy and I did everything and nothing worked. There's only one thing that works for a restaurant, which nobody will tell you. All these things that I'm telling you, let me say, nobody will talk about it.
Exactly.
Nobody will tell
That's the
you.
whole point of the podcast.
Yeah, so no one, you can go and ask like restaurant owners who own these big chains also, they will not tell you. And I don't know why. Everyone likes to talk very vaguely. All the restaurant owners, nobody will tell you. If you ask any person what is the investment required in a restaurant, they will not tell you. They will always, and that's why I gave you a ballpark figure, because I don't want to be that person. They will always, I understand there will be lots of variable costs and there'll be lots of factors on which it will depend. But just to start off with, I should know whether it's going to be 50 lakhs or whether it's going to be 3 CR. Because
So
maybe
that,
50 lakhs I can invest, but 3 CR, there's no question that I will invest. So at least some idea. So, but people will just not give you an answer. So anyway, to answer your question, only Zomato works. If you're opening a restaurant, just don't do anything. Just market extremely well on Zomato. I think Zomato should give me like a cut. Yeah, that's the only thing that works. Nothing else. You have to make sure that your Zomato rating is good. You have to make sure your Zomato reviews are good. You have to have great pictures on Zomato. You have to make sure that you're on the top on Zomato when people are searching for, let's say, I don't know, like a bar or a brewery or like a rooftop dining or a romantic place. In all those keywords, my restaurant has to show up. It's very, very important. So that's the only thing that works. And then, of course, there are other things. Eventually, your word of mouth and, you have a loyal customer base and all of that will work. And some kind of, like, offline also, like people will see your board and everything. If you have like a good location, people will see you and they will come. But I think just blindly go crazy on Zomato.
So the next one would be like, how do you take about the customer feedbacks, good and bad?
So good is like something very, very, even till today, I feel very motivated. If I get a good feedback, good review, it just, that's where, I mean, that's what I had
The
done
purpose
all
what
of
you
this
did.
for, right?
Yeah.
So whether it's for food, service, ambience, anything, vibe of the place, you just feel so happy and it's so fulfilling. So you just feel good and you go home. For bad feedback, I think you take some of the bad feedback with a pinch of salt, because also I think in India, customers are extremely demanding. And I was seeing some other podcast or some interview the other day, and I think it was, I think someone from Uber or someone like some a person was talking about it, and they were like, Indian customers, they want everything, but they don't want to pay for anything.
Anything, yeah.
And so, you have to take it with a pinch of salt, because people will come and expect the world in 200 rupees. It's not possible. But having said that, we take our negative feedbacks very seriously. Some feedback, by reading it only, you can tell that, things were not so bad, but the customer just got pissed off because maybe, they didn't get the right discount or this and that. So those we ignore. Again, I'm being very honest and blunt over here. So we ignore that, because I cannot, turn things upside down just basis that feedback. But yes, the other feedback, which is genuine, which we get to know, like I can tell which feedback is genuine and which is not.
Yeah.
And so that, even till today, we take it very seriously. We, every once a week, we collate all of that, we do a meeting, we look into it. So the food feedback is given to the kitchen team, the service feedback is given to the service team. Whatever is sort of like we need to look into, we try to rectify it immediately. And I think it's very important. That's the only way, right? Like, for you to know what's happening. Because also, I think, as a restaurant owner, sometimes you tend to get very disconnected, because you are seeing things from a very different angle and from the outside. And a lot of times, like, so you will not know, like, sitting here, I can't tell what a person sitting over there who's ordering food is sort of experiencing. So I think it's very important to take your feedback seriously and work on it immediately.
What do you think, or where do you see your restaurant and cafe in another 5 years?
I don't know. I mean, I would always only think like good things about it, and I have like a great vision where, I want to expand and scale it up and all of that. But I also want to, like, I don't want to go crazy with the growth where I start setting up like 20 outlets and or take funding and do. So I don't want to go that route. That I'm very sure. I want to take it slow, set up one unit at a time, make it profitable. That's I'm very clear about that. I don't want to get into a space where I'm taking VC funding and, I'm just like setting up like 100 outlets and then all of them are loss making. I don't want to be doing that at all. If 5 years from now, I don't know. I mean, I don't have any specific plans. Ideally, I would want maybe, realistically speaking, maybe I would want to scale it up, have like maybe one more bar in Bangalore, maybe one somewhere outside in some other city, and maybe have a couple of more cafes. So, just scale it up, like, expand.
So what
That's the
factors do
plan.
you look into when you're trying to expand? Are you going to go for a franchisee model, or if you yourself are going to open another outlet, what are the factors you think, okay, this is the right time, I need to expand?
I think, I mean, as of now, I have not really thought about a franchise model. I think I'm going to do it by myself. In terms of factors, that's a big challenge now, because when I did my first cafe and my first restaurant, after that, I thought now scaling up will be very easy, because now I know so many things. So I can just quickly go replicate everything and everything will happen. Earlier that time, so I did not know. Then also I set it up. Now I know everything, so now it's so easy to set it up. But you know what, I've realized that it's tougher now, because now because I know too much. That's what I said in the beginning of the podcast also, that earlier, because I didn't know, I mean, I didn't know any problems also. So I was like, okay, this location is very nice, let's set it up. Now that I know every location, every place, every restaurant, everywhere, I see only red flags.
Right.
Like, I only see wrong things, why this is not working out, why this will not work out, what challenges will happen over here. So, it's very difficult for me to now say that, okay, this is the right place. Like, at that time, it was just like, I saw the location and I was like, yeah, this looks great. Yeah, why not? There are offices over here. It's a nice road. It's a big space. Let's set it up over here. Now it's like, I know, oh my God, there's a school there. There's a hospital there. This area is not nice. What about the BPMP office of this area? I know all the red flags. So those are some challenges I
you already
feel.
filter before itself.
Yeah, it's very difficult. I only see red flags, red flags, red flags. So it's very, very difficult. But I mean, yeah, I think location is a big factor. That is the biggest factor. So I feel whether you're doing your first one or whether you're expanding, I think you should look at it in two ways, that there are certain irreversible changes and certain reversible changes. So you can get your staff wrong, your menu wrong, your marketing wrong, your furniture wrong. All of that you can change. You can reverse it. I can change the furniture. I can get new staff. I can change the menu. But certain irreversible changes like location, I cannot change. Like once I've established my restaurant in a specific space, I can't I can't pick it up and then just, right? So those irreversible changes are something I think you should really think about and make sure you get those right, because that you can't change. And so I think location is a big factor, because I can't do anything to turn around that. And it really depends on what, and location also, like at a very micro level, that like within 5 kilometers of that space, like who are the people living there, what do they want, because these days you have so many options. Nobody will really travel 10-15 kilometers, and especially in a city like Bangalore, right?
Every 100 meters there's a restaurant, every 100 meters there's a pub or a bar.
Absolutely. You want to go into your neighborhood, unless and until like it's something very like a big brewski or something that you want to
go all the way.
Yeah, but that also, like, how many times do people do that? They'll go once or twice, and then mostly it'll be people nearby only. So I think location is a big factor. If you get your location right, I think 50% of the things are done. And then of course you can keep experimenting and trying out things with your menu and stuff and your interiors and all of that. Those are also things that on the go you can correct, and you can make sure that you get it right. Yeah.
So if you wouldn't have done, or if you wouldn't have come into the restaurant industry, what would you be?
I would continue working in my private sector jobs, just like doing with some corporate. And yeah, I mean, that was the plan. This was never the plan. So I thought that I'll continue doing that. Like, I used to really enjoy working. It's not like that I did not like my job, or I did not like, some people have that thing, that they don't want to work for anyone else and they want to do their own thing. I mean, while I wanted to do my own thing, but I never have this thing. I used to love being in a job, because like just that, like, I don't know, it was just so, especially now after doing my business, I just feel that it's such a privilege to have a job, right? And a good one, like that pays you well, that gives you there's so many perks. You get a good team. There's no, like, it's not like it's your money. And if you work a little bit also, like, properly, then you get so much appreciation and incentives and bonuses, and and you get a salary at the end of every month, a fixed salary. Yeah, and which will keep increasing every year if you just, like, do a little, like, it's not like you have to go crazy. If you have the right attentions, you do a little bit of hard work, you are sincere, you'll keep getting. So I love being in a job. But
and I think it's the vice versa for the person who's just, working 9 to 6 or 9 to 7.
Yeah, like people keep but like business is just, I can never say that, oh, now it's Friday evening, I'm going to forget about, like, I can never say that. It's not even about weekend. I can't say that, oh, now I don't like this, I will not do it. I don't have that option. No matter what, every day I have to show up, I have to feel positive, I have to be good. Like, you asked me, what do you do as a leader to motivate others? It's just like, what about my motivation? Who is motivating me?
How do you get motivated?
I have to just do it by myself. There is no one to motivate me. I have to every day pick up myself, motivate myself, and go to work, no matter what's happened with me in my personal life, no matter what's happening back at home, no matter how I'm feeling that day, no matter how I'm feeling mentally, physically, emotionally. Who can I tell? I can't go and tell my team that, today I'm feeling very sick, or today I'm not, I'm not in the mood to work. Do I have the option to tell my team that? Absolutely not. I can't tell anyone.
And even if you do, they won't understand at your perspective.
They will just be shocked.
Yeah,
they will be like,
exactly.
They will be like, what is she saying?
From your perspective, or whoever it is, I don't think they will understand our pain.
So I think I love, jobs, and like, and in fact, that's why I also, like, during COVID, I again joined, I took up a role in a company, because COVID, everything was shut, obviously, and
so
I could not
manage through COVID. I think you just started started just before COVID started.
Right before COVID, yeah. I think I started in 2019 November, and 2020 March or April
March,
is
yeah,
when
it was
like the lockdown
yeah.
happened. End of March, I think. So we were shut down. So I think one thing that really worked out for me during COVID was that my landlord was very supportive, and I think most places that could not work out or that shut down is where their landlords were not helpful. So my landlord did not ask me to pay rent, which was a big help, because obviously the earnings were zero, right, suddenly, and then like there was still some costs because I had some staff, I had to give them food, I had to pay for their staff room. Then obviously like electricity bills, there were so many other maintenance things, so many other things, right? There was so much stock of food and all of that going waste and all of those issues. So I think my landlord really helped me by not asking for a rent and giving me like a rent free period for a few months. So that was very helpful. So basically what I did was I just minimized all my costs and I tried to keep it as low as possible by I, as soon as the buses and the trains and all of that opened up, I sent all my staff back home, which was again a difficult decision because I didn't know when the government would allow us to open. So let's say if the government, that time we didn't know, right? So if the government would have said that, okay, 2 weeks you have to open up, how would I get my staff? This is like, I'm talking about 60, 80 people. I've sent all of them away. What do I do? But I can't keep them also. How do I feed 80 people? How do I pay for their rent? What do I do? I have zero earnings. I took that decision because it seemed like COVID was here to stay. Yeah. So I sent all of them back. I retained a couple of important people who were like my manager, and a couple of people who did not really have a home to go back to. And so I retained a couple of people, and then just tried to sort of with basically really low costs, and then slowly like when we were allowed to open up, then with a very short menu, I did not start hiring staff immediately. I literally opened with 2 staff.
Wow.
And this is like a 4,000 square feet space. Yeah. So it was like 150 packs, this thing. But obviously, I mean, I didn't get that kind of crowd at that time. Hardly people would come because people were really scared to step out. But still, like just to even clean up the place, or like even to have those 10 items ready on the menu, just 2 staff, it was very difficult. And then slowly, like initially I remember for weeks and weeks, no customer would come out because even I was not really going out anywhere. But then slowly we had like our first table, literally like from 1 table, then 2 tables, then 4 tables. I remember there was a time when I was kind of trying to call my manager, and he was just like, generally he's very responsive. He was not answering my calls, and I was wondering what's happening. And then finally after 2-3 hours, I got in touch with him, and he said that, oh, the restaurant got really busy today. And we had like 6 tables that day. So that was busy because there were only 2 staff, right? Yeah. So then obviously like 6 tables, and I was very happy because 6 tables was like a big thing. And I was like, oh, how did that happen? So very slowly we like 1 table at a time literally is how we sort of like got back into business.
I mean, I love or I'm really enjoying what you're saying as a entrepreneur come a restaurateur. So what is the best part of you being into this industry? Like, what do you enjoy the most?
I think when I see my restaurant completely full, packed, and every table, like sometimes I just go and stand there and I see like it's all full. There are some people waiting outside also to get a table, and I look at each table and I see everyone having a good time. Some people are doing like a birthday party celebration. Some people are just people who come from office and they are doing whatever, they are cribbing about their jobs or whatever. But like I can tell from a distance that everyone is having a great time. And they're drinking and they're eating food and they're going on ordering stuff after the other. And, it's like, that's something that like in that moment is when I feel that, oh my God, it was all worth it. That feeling that you get, because I have seen that space completely empty.
Yes.
And there have been months, it's not like I'm talking about 2 days and weeks and whatever. I have seen it empty for like weeks and weeks. It was so difficult in the beginning. So now to see that space full is like, that is, I think, because I can't say anything else. I mean, of course, money and this and that and, whatever, you get good feedback. But then, I mean, I was also, of course, it's more money when you have your own business and you are expanding and all that. But then I was also getting a lot of money in my jobs, right? Like, I mean, I would have whatever grown, and it's not like money was never really a reason why I did this, because, I don't know, I don't want to say that it was not anywhere on my list, but definitely not the first thing. You get enough money if you work hard in a job also, you will get like, and especially like after bearing all the losses and everything, like in the beginning you also have to bear a lot of losses and like costs and so many things, right? So that can now not be a factor. So I think, yeah, that like just seeing happy customers is.
So one last question: what would you advise the newbies or the people who are coming into the industry now? So what do you think is the template for a person to get into the industry?
The first thought that came to me was just like, don't do it. But I don't want to say that obviously, because I remember, so also like now that you're asking me this question, I remember when I was doing my research, and I did my research for almost 6 months, I think, where I was only talking to restaurant owners, and I think I must have connected to almost 50 restaurant owners
Wow.
across the country, people in Bangalore and outside. All these people are people who are running their restaurants, and I'm talking about like big and small both, not just like even very big like popular brands, right? I met everyone. Not even one person told me that you should go ahead and do it.
Yes.
All of them said don't do it. Can you imagine? And these are people who are running big
years.
successful restaurants, and I was wondering, why are they saying, like, they have a successful restaurant, why are they saying this? Not even one person out of those 50 people told me to go ahead and start. Like, so I don't want to be that person now. I mean, as difficult as it is, whatever it is, but you know, if someone wants to start, then I mean, I think they should go for it. But I think certain things that they should get right is definitely, you know, planning. Like, everyone can make a budget plan and like a P&L and all of that on papers. But, you know, I think accounting for certain costs that are not covered generally in the P&L, right? Like under the table costs. Nobody talks about that, but it's a huge cost.
Yes, it
It's
is.
a huge cost. So if you're not accounting for it, then obviously your balance sheet will go haywire, right? And so accounting for, like, people will only account for like most of the times the setup cost, but nobody will talk about, like, first 3 months or 6 months of the business you have to keep pumping in money, because you will not make profits, right? So you have to have that kind of bank balance. So many restaurants I know shut down only because they had enough budget to set up their restaurant, but they did not have budget to run it for the first 3-4 months, which is so important. So, and even though they were getting good response, but it was not at that level where they were like sort of like, breaking even or whatever. So I think having that enough operational money to run it for at least 6 months without making a profit, and if you start making a profit in the third, fourth, fifth month, great. But I think that buffer should be there, because for you there's so many things that are going wrong at any given point, that you should have that flexibility. Like, if I have that bank balance, then I can think about other things, I can innovate. Like, you asked me some question about innovation in the kitchen. If I don't have money in my bank account, how will I think about like a new recipe, right?
Exactly.
If I'm worried whether, like, how to pay my salaries next month, I can't sit and think about like a nice cocktail drink that I want to make. My brain will not go there. I'm worried about like how, because there'll be 20 people standing on my head. They want salaries, and if I don't pay them salary, they will run away. So what will I do with that cocktail recipe? So I think to be able to think freely, to ensure that you can do 100 things in those 6 months, because you have to constantly, you might have thought that, okay, I will do this concept, this cuisine, whatever, but you have to take your product to the customer to see what will work and what will not work, and then work on the customer feedback. So to be able to have that bandwidth and space, and to allow yourself to think creatively, you need that buffer and that bank balance, so that you can just not worry about that part of the business and then focus on these other things. I think that kind of financial buffer is very, very important. So in fact, like, this is something that I was trying to tell you even in the beginning of the podcast, that like whatever you said, that why you are starting this podcast, I think I share a very similar vision. And keeping that in mind, I am also starting like my consulting company by the name of Thrive Consulting, which is going to do this only, like, help out new people who want to set up their restaurants, who have no idea about setting up restaurants. And most consulting companies do, like, they will only give you advice, but nobody will really help you in the implementation.
Correct.
So that's the difference that I want to bring about, where we have skin in the game. It's not like, okay, I'm sitting here and I'm just telling you something, and then whether it works out or not for you, that's your headache. So it's going to be more like, that I have skin in the game. I'm there with you, helping you in your implementation, making sure first 3 months we are hand holding you, we are making sure that you reach that profitability mark, and and then we'll sort of like let you sort of like have your own journey from there. So that's the focus. So I think, yeah, so these are a few things I feel that, people should take care of. And like, like I said, also that getting the right location, getting your marketing right through Zomato, that is very important.
So now for some fun round, we have the rapid fire round.
Oh,
Okay.
wow.
So you got to.
I never thought someone will be asking me the rapid fire round.
So your favorite dish in your entire menu?
Crispy corn.
Crispy corn.
Yeah.
Okay. You're a coffee person or a tea person?
Coffee.
Coffee. Okay. Sweet or savory?
Both.
Both.
Yeah, I can't
Okay. So which one is your go-to comfort food after a long day?
So multiple, right? Like I think sometimes I love like a hot bowl of Maggie. Otherwise, just simple dal chawal. I love that at any day.
This is your favorite restaurant apart from yours?
I recently tried out this restaurant in Indranagar. It's by the name of Sarposh,
Okay.
and they have Kashmiri cuisine, and I just loved it.
So
Yeah.
which is your favorite cuisine?
It has to be, I think, it's a toss up between like Indian and Asian. Like
Okay.
Asian as in like the Japanese and like, yeah.
Got it. Okay. So are you a early morning prep or a late night cleanup?
No, I'm not a morning person at all. And considering like I'm in the bar industry, I can't be because I have to be awake till like 1 a.m., 2 a.m.
Okay.
So yeah.
Important kitchen gadget that you feel is important in the industry?
Separate veg and non-veg knives and chopping boards, and I'm very
important.
particular about that because
So have you tried any weirdest food combination but you think it works out?
dessert or something that I tried, like like a cake or something like that, and it had some very weird kind of a sauce on top of it, which was a salty kind of a sauce. In terms of combination, I've also had something very very weird, which was like these ants on like there are these particular kind of ants, and they sprinkle it all over your dish and
Okay.
give it to you, and you're
Okay.
supposed to like just pop it in your mouth.
Okay.
Yeah, and I've had that, and I mean, I thought it was crazy.
Eaten or takeout?
I think eaten.
Eaten, yeah. And any one dream restaurant that you always wanted to have?
Yeah, I think Bastion.
So one favorite dish that you can never live without?
Dal chawal.
So are you more into a cook kind of a person or a manage kind of a person?
Manage 100%.
So what's the most annoying request by the customers you've had till now?
To like when they want to club discount offers. So like if they're coming through like a Zomato gold discount or a Zomato 20% off, so they want to apply that on like an in-house happy hours offer. So they're like, okay, you give me happy hours also, now you give me Zomato on top of it also, and I'm just like, oh my god, like what is this?
Got it.
Yeah.
We are done with the fun rapid fire round as well.
Yeah.
I hope you had fun. I
Yes.
will just come back one purity.
Thank
So
you.
that is why. Thank you so much.
Thank you.